That's very threatening, you know, and was very threatening, and is not perhaps the best expression of what they were trying to achieve. You're quite right, they were trying to achieve civil rights. It all started with fundamental rights, one man, one vote, which was not the case in Derry in 1968-69. Unbelievable. While the blacks in the South had the vote in 1968-69, the Catholics in Northern Ireland did not. It was entirely dependent upon property. So if you rented or you didn't own property or a certain amount of it, you didn't have a vote. And those that had a lot of property...
More fundamental is to look at the unemployment figures in Derry at that time, and among the Catholic population, the unemployment figures were in the 58%. Among the Protestant population, the unemployment figures were in the 9-10%. So it was active state-sponsored discrimination.
Through the vote.
Yeah.
There was not one Catholic on the corporation, the city council. There was not one even garbage collector working for the...
It was state-sponsored discrimination.
Correct.
And whenever you have situations like that, and I don't care who the players are.
Yeah, but understand that it has to do with the vote.
Yes,
the vote is the fundamental thing.
Kind of social injustice,
right.
You're going to have trouble.
But it comes from the exercise of the franchise. In America, you got off the boat and you were met by a guy from Tammany Hall, and he welcomed you as a voter, and he wanted you to live in his precinct because you may be the poorest of the poor, but you had a vote. And the Irish told the rich folks up on the hill in Brookline in Boston, they said, you may have the banks, you may own the banks and the factories, but we own the boat, and we own downtown, we own town hall. You see, that's the difference between a republic and a whatever Britain is.
But in modern day Quebec, where I grew up, you have a situation where you can't be a policeman if you're not French, you can't work for the government if you're not French, even though they have the vote, but they're outnumbered. But, you know, all the economic access, it used to be the other way around. But now you have a situation.
Are you from Quebec?
Yeah.
Oh, have you seen Bon Cop, Good Cop?
No.
Parlez-vous français? Oui.
Oui,
Oh, moi aussi.
But anyway, you still have that discrimination, even though people have the vote. You can't get a government job if you have like Kelly as the last name. Nowadays.
So you justified in using physical force to change that up there?
No, I came to San Diego.
Just as she was on the verge of breaking into physical force.
But you see why what we're talking about tonight is always there.
Well,
at what stage?
My brother, who has kids and married a French Canadian, he made sure that they got the French Canadian last name, Menard, and not Kelly, because that way you get access.
But it's a language requirement in Quebec. I mean, they had the same situation in Quebec with the language and the culture.
With a little bit of racial component.
It's an ethnic component.
Yeah, because they wanted to preserve their culture by preserving their language, and to be honest with you, I supported them in that.
Right, but it is difficult when you're excluded from whole portions of the economic system because of ethnicity, not because you don't speak the language, but because your last name is not.
But the Irish government system, even today, in civil service in Ireland, you have to be able to deliver service in both English and Gaelic.
But that's not the issue, because you can be bilingual, but if you don't, I'm bilingual, but that doesn't matter. I'm not going to get the job because I'm not French. Origin, Purland. So it's not a language thing, because you can be perfectly bilingual, which most people are, but you have to have the ethnicity of the.
Well, is it?
That's going on right now.
In Quebec, yeah.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. It's a sad thing. I mean.
Is it covert or overt? I mean, are they allowed to ask you that question?
It's illegal if they discriminate.
Is it legal or illegal?
It's illegal if they discriminate against you, if you meet the requirements, the language requirements.
But it's not institutionalized.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not written anywhere, but it's the fact of life. I mean, if you go to the police force in Montreal, you will not find English people in the police force except maybe a token English person. Because to get a nice job like that, you need to have, French ethnicity.
Or in the fire department, of course.
But is
in the fire department, or in the government,
in the provincial government, in one of the ministries. You must be joking. Think that an Anglo, even if he's perfectly bilingual, would be welcome there. It's a closed shop. It's like the Afrikaners at the National Party.
In a way it is, but there are requirements. I mean, it would be illegal. If you could prove discrimination and document it, you could have
Yeah.
case.
Well, I think that
You can't prove it.
it exists everywhere.
Right.
It sounds like it's
So
pretty
you have
bad.
to vote, but
Yeah.
we don't have-
I understand. We still are a long way from a just society in many, many places. But in Northern Ireland, it was actually institutionalized.
Right.
I mean, it was actually the law, you know. So that is quite a different thing than a minority, a black person in Southeast San Diego feeling that they can't get a job in the city because they're black, or they can't get a job with whatever, which is very, very real to them, and often is the case. Anyway,
It doesn't seem to me minorities have any trouble getting jobs with the city government.
It's usually, no, they want it. They want
There's
it.
lots and lots of blacks working for the city of San Diego.
there are.
I see them on the street all the time.
They work in the same thing in Balboa Park.
I just want to say one more thing. I don't want to get bogged down in Quebec. I just want to say that the French were excluded economically up until the 60s.
Yeah.
And then they reversed the whole thing.
Okay.
Libre could break libre.
So, yeah, so now I mean, I look at Ireland and I say, like, all these immigrants that are coming in, and I say, well, the Irish were so mistreated by the colonial power, and now how are they going to treat the Africans and the East Europeans, etc.? And there's a lot of tension, and it's sad that, you know, I mean, I'm not saying across the board it's a problem, but it's sad that people who were so mistreated for, you know, tribal.
This is-
That they're beginning to limit immigration in the country.
This is a wonderful discussion. I'd love to have it with you, maybe at a separate point, because I have a lot of thoughts around this myself.
We talk after.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry for that tangent.
No, that's always interesting. I'm most guilty of it of all. I'm the one that digresses more than anybody else. But so that we can get something out of tonight's class, though, I just again want to continue on, see if we can get right down to modern time, and then we can quit. How much that influenced events. Now, obviously, the 1916 event was very traumatic. It had a lot of implications all over the place, and it in some respects it failed, in other respects it succeeded. It certainly succeeded in the sense that it raised an awareness and a consciousness among the people who were previously opposed to it. A lot of the physical force people who went out, as they say, and did the thing, were at first maligned terribly. They were like spat upon, or rocks thrown at them as they were being brought to the ships to bring across to England. And then as the English started to execute them and overreacted, and also they weren't getting the home rule that they were promised. Not promised, they actually got it. And there was so many things just waiting to happen. And the cry at the time used to be, wait until home rule. Like, for instance, there was a lot of terrible social problems that needed to be put right. Like Maud Gonne and Markovich and so on were trying to introduce soup kitchens or to feed the poor children in the slums of Dublin. But there were those who were saying, no, don't do that because you're going to let the British off the hook. You see, if we start doing that and doing it ourselves, then, we're not going to get anywhere. Now at least they're shamed. It's the biggest slum in the world. It puts Calcutta to shame, and so on. And they were saying, just wait for home rule.
Worse is better.
Well, there's logic always. That's human. We all can pick our particular and say, no, that's what makes sense to me. So that's the problem, you see. They're both right and they're both wrong, depending on which thing. But all of these things were going on. Now, home rule, this idea of home rule, in other words, home rule meant dominion status, essentially, where we would get back our own parliament in Dublin and run it as it been. Still be subject to the Queen and so on, and a very large amount of control from Britain, which is ultimately what we actually got. The Free State was not a free state. It was certainly not a republic. But the people were getting more and more and more cynical and dissatisfied with the English that they had promised them so much. Throughout the First World War, Redmond, the leader of the parliamentary party, the Irish party, said, go fight for England and they'll reward you with home rule as soon as the war is over. Well, of course, some thought, yes, that's the way to do it. Let's just show how loyal we are so that they will trust us with independence, like they would. Others said, not only no, but hell no. Let's. So that was going on throughout the First World War. As it turned out, there were more Irish people per head of population served in the British Army in the trenches of France than the British. But they did it voluntarily. And then, paradoxically, when the British tried to impose conscription, was the biggest mistake they made, even above 1916, which was extraordinary when you consider that the Irish were giving their manhood. I had members of my family